silence for a while. Heaven can't wait, we're only watching the skies. Hoping for the best, but expecting the worst. Are you gonna drop the bomb or not? Let us die young or let us live forever. We don't have the power, but we never say never. Sitting in a sandpit, life is a short trip, but music's for the sad man. Can you imagine when this race is won? Turn our golden faces into the sun. Praising our leaders, we're getting in tune. The music's played by the Marlin. Forever young, I want to be forever young. Do you really wanna live forever, forever and ever? Forever young, I want to be forever young. Do you really wanna live forever, forever young? Some are like water, some are like the heat. Some are a melody and some are the beat. Sooner or later, they all will be gone. Why don't they stay on? It's so hard to get old without a cause. I don't wanna perish like a fading horse. Used like diamonds in the sun, and diamonds are forever. So many adventures couldn't happen today. So many songs we forgot to play. So many dreams swinging out of the blue. We let them come true. Forever young, I want to be forever young. Do you really wanna live forever, forever and ever? Forever young, I want to be forever young. Do you really wanna live forever, forever young? Forever young.
There will be no real non-controlled currency in the world.
We're coming for you, banks.
And this is exactly what these Bitcoin Cash people are building.
Shout out to the Dragon Riders and the House of the Dragon.
Because it's a completely different situation than it was 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, that's how frogs get boiled. And they added a bunch of new opcodes and they're doing a bunch of things over there.
It will be the most hated rally ever because a lot of people from some propaganda hate Bitcoin Cash.
All right. Hello and welcome back to the Bitcoin Cash podcast. Following Bitcoin Cash on its rise to global reserve currency, we're back for 2026. It is the year of the cockroach. This is episode number 170, BCH Whiteboard strategy session featuring Emergent Reasons, Jonathan Silverblood, imaginary username, and FiendishCrypto. Today is Saturday, the 10th of January, 2026. I'm your host, Jeremy. Jet is doing the producing, and we're starting with hitting the top 10. BCH started the year off really well. We're now at number 11, but we did sneak into the top 10 as part of New Year's. It was just after New Year's Australian time, I believe, and kind of New Year's Eve in Europe and America. But right now, BCH is $636.78 US. We're up. One BTC sat buys only 142.4 BCH sats, still growing on the ratio there. One ETH buys 485 megasats, also slightly up. Selene 30-day is at 600 users, and the Tokenaut TVL at 9,722 BCH. Today, we're not going to do the usual news and chat and current events and deep dive on a topic. Instead, we're doing a BCH strategy whiteboard. It's a bit of an experiment. We'll see how it goes. But before we get into that, we've got to just check in with all our guests. Happy New Year, lads. Starting with Emergent. How you doing? How's 2026 feeling for you so far?
I'm doing very well, thanks, and Happy New Year. Yeah, as we were saying before we started, right, Year of the Cockroach. I'm looking forward to success of BCH in the year. Yeah, things are going great. Actually, we'll probably get into it later, but the development of the EXO project is moving ahead very nicely. The re-entering the top 10, probably most of us here don't spend a lot of time looking at the price, but it's also very, but maybe you. I said most of us.
Yes.
I didn't say the one super except no, but my point is it's obviously a very important signal and it is meaningful, right? It's one of many meaningful signals. So that was a fantastic signal to see. I haven't done any research, but it would be very nice to know how many projects have basically gone into a coma and then come back to the top 10. Like, does that ever happen?
It's never happened. It's never happened. We're the first
Never
ever.
Okay.
Like, obviously, coins have gone from outside the top 10
right, like
into the
11,
top
10,
10.
11, 10 or something, right?
Yeah, but we're the only one that has ever fallen out of the top 10, out of the top 30, back into the top 10. I'm sure there's no coin that has ever.
Right. Okay, yeah, exactly that. So none of us are surprised by it, right? But the rest of the crypto ecosystem is all YouTube face, like, oh, how does this happen? So anyway, yes, a very good start to the year and Happy New Year's to everyone.
Happy New Year. Okay, Uname, how you doing?
Well, I'm doing okay personally. The world is terrible, which is probably a good thing for us. But yeah, I'm basically doing okay, and as John said, the price action is nice. I have a whole list of active contracts on BCH Bull. Most of them are hedges, because if I switch over to the BCH view, they are all red. They're super red, which is kind of not nice to see in the local context, but also really nice in a larger context. So yeah, I'm not complaining.
Yeah, shorting BCH always feels like such a win. Even hedging BCH, because it's like either the price goes down, in which case your hedge gets in the money and you end up with more sats, or the price goes up, in which case your stack is worth more. And okay, sucks that I got liquidated. So yeah, I feel you on that. Why are you worried about the state of the world? What's going wrong?
Well, I mean, for one, like the thing that we have, that a lot of us have predicted for a long time, that the USD is gonna go to shit. It might actually happen pretty soon. So yeah, that's gonna be very unpleasant for a lot of people.
What warning sign are you seeing? Why is it different? I mean, obviously it's on the slow, gradual descent, but why do you feel like we're about to?
I mean, you gotta look at the deficits, right? And the US just had like the biggest deficit probably ever since World War II. Yeah, and that was a long time ago. That was a long time ago, and it's doing, I think, the largest deficit in peacetime ever.
20 billion every day, right? If you actually work that out, for every person, including child, retired person, that comes to, fact check me on this, but I think it's around $50,000 per year, or is $50-$60 per day. If you could just think about that, how is that affordable? It's bankrupt.
And it's not going to anything productive either. It's not going to building bridges. It's not going to anything that would generate productivity in the future. It's basically just setting money on fire. And
wait! I thought it was spreading democracy around the world.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's productive for some people.
Define democracy, sir.
A small number of people. Yeah, it's probably not going to be good for the dollar itself. So.
All right, fair enough. Fiendish, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great, thank you. Happy New Year to everyone out there and to everyone on the call. And this is definitely the year of the BCH cockroach. And yeah, I think what Uname said there is nails it on the head. There's a lot of stuff going on. Everything that we predicted is coming to the point where, okay, it's kind of happening, or it's going to happen very soon. In Europe, it's also the same. Looking at UK and a lot of democratic norms we've got used to are sort of moving away, and it makes me so much more bullish on Bitcoin Cash. And I think it's sad on one side that it takes sort of such events to create the success of sound money, but in hindsight, I think maybe it was the only way. One thing's for sure, I'm very grateful that we've got Bitcoin Cash and we've got this amazing life raft to help us during these strange times. And I really think this is going to be the best year yet. I think the third, fourth on a row.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited by everything that's going to happen in 2026 on BCH. And I really think when you look at the May upgrade this year, sparks are going to fly.
Yes.
Watch this space.
I mean, I was posting, I have a little graph. I have that graph of the coin market cap rank. But if you actually overlay the latest upgrades, I didn't go back and do 2022 and early, but if you overlay the upgrades, it's actually amazing. Like Cash Tokens comes when BCH was right at the bottom. It hits right at the bottom, and then immediately BCH spiked up. And the same at the Velma and Abla, both of them, Jessica, they both also, the BCH spiked up the ranks. That might just be sort of, coincidence, and obviously it's also not checking our price, but our rank. So it's like we're moving up relative to the competition. And so we'll see if that
maximize the number of chips.
Yeah, that's right. We have to be careful how far we take it. Like, just upgrade to bullish, more upgrades.
I'm glad that we can all laugh at that, because there's plenty of people in the world who would, oh yeah, that's what we should do.
Yeah, I think we only get rewarded for good upgrades. Basically, we don't have any bad ones to compare with. So they have to be well fed upgrades. But I think Layla's going to be one of them for sure. Jonathan, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I think we're looking to go into 2026, and we're going to see the strongest year that I think Bitcoin Cash has ever really experienced. We have the upgrades themselves, like just compounding their values year after year. And at this point, when the loops and all these features come, the scripting is going to be in such a enormously good state that I think not looking at it should kind of be seen as negligence on other people's part. You can do so much with it at extremely low cost and with amazing reliability. So I think it's gonna spur quite a lot of projects to be built on it. I also think that we're seeing the re-entrancy into top 10 is going to have a lot of people ask questions like, why the heck didn't Bitcoin Cash actually die? And when they go back and look at it again, they're gonna see like their former past. They're gonna see the reflections of who they were
you're on the
back
screen.
in
Get off.
2015, and it's going to, it's going to have a massive impact on how people think and how the narrative shifts. So I am confident that we're gonna see a really, really strong year, and I'm looking forward for it.
So let me ask you this. With BCH getting back in the top 10, maybe having increased success, maybe more chatter on the street, people are starting to reevaluate and look in the mirror, think, what did I get wrong? Okay, that's all a natural part of the process. Will they listen to the BCH community about why it's happening? Because there's a very big difference between these idiot shitcoiners, that they all dismissed and ignored, and now it seems our methodology is working, our results are being proven, but will they find their own explanation for why things are working, or will they listen to our explanation for why things are working?
They will, of course, always defend their own identity and have things adjusted to their own ideals. And I think that's just to be expected as part of a course. But I also think it's going to be less relevant than most people think, because we are not building for the already crypto enthusiast. We are building for the 9 other billion people on this planet. And the reason that we have had difficulties in getting traction has been both technical, and that part has been very, very well addressed now. But it has also been that we have had like some kind of stigma, right? You go to a Bitcoin meetup and you talk about Bitcoin Cash, and you're usually, booed out of the room essentially. And the same thing kind of happens online and in other places. But that has largely disappeared over the years. And I think this is the year where that has shifted into the other direction, where you go to a generic crypto meetup and you start talking about Bitcoin, and people generally don't speak well about what you're saying. Like they hear what you're saying, but markets is kind of, what's the interesting part? And then you can talk about the Bitcoin Cash side and all the improvements. And if you don't mention the word Bitcoin Cash, the improvements are going to look amazing to practically anyone who's in the scene, who hear about all these great things that happen. And of course, the stigma, like it's largely being removed, but it's not non-existent. So there are still going to be some parts to it, but it doesn't matter at this point. I think we took our big boulder and rolled it up a hill, and now we're looking at it go down the hill and like, yay, this is beautiful, go do your work. And it's not like you can easily stop it at this point.
Yes, very true. Imagine, I see you nodding along there. Do you have a take on that? Are people going to revisit their narratives with our explanations or their own?
No, I think Jonathan said it very well. Like at a root level, people are going to defend their identity, their ego, and admitting that they've been wrong for 10 years is just not going to happen, right? They'll find some explanation. Of course, there will be exceptions who, actually take a deep look back and say, oh my God, like that. Wow, it really was like that. But no, I think the vast majority will just find new explanations. I don't know what those will look like, but I'm sure they'll find some explanation like, oh, Roger has left BCH and therefore it has, able to do something different, or who knows what they'll come up with.
Yes, indeed. I want to give it. Yes.
Anything in the first place.
But then that's on us to then at least call that out so that people who are relevant and in the know, know that that's not the case, right? We don't want.
I don't know. Does it matter to call people out at this point? Just. Oh, okay. I think everybody else heard which part. You mean about whether something? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was saying that. No, I think Jonathan said the right thing. He said that people will protect their identity, protect their ego, and so I think people are not going to just. The vast majority of people who have been involved in crypto are not going to come out and say, I was wrong over the last 10 years. Just the whole time I was just flat out wrong. It's just not going to happen in any large, to any large degree. But people will find their own way to work it into their worldview that Roger left, or that they were never actually against, whatever BCH is, and they'll get BCH completely wrong. They'll be like, I was never against unlimited block size, and it's like, that's not anyway. You know what I mean? They wouldn't even get it, but somehow they'll just find their way to excuses to get on board, and whatever. And Jeremy was saying we have to call it out in some cases maybe, but I think in a lot of cases it's just whatever. We just let that boulder roll, like Jonathan said. It's just going to go, and we just let it go.
I mean, I always think about it like the moment of recognition has to be when they're pressing like buy on the exchange or on Shapeshift or wherever it is. At that moment, it's like, okay, I was wrong. Like, you cannot be sitting there looking at the buy button to buy BCH and not thinking, okay, why am I in this situation, after shit talking it and dismissing it? And, for some of these guys, it will have been literally 10 years ago, not 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago, sitting there with the sell button, haha, I'm dumping on these stupid, B caches, and then just being like, wait, how am I back here? I think that will be the moment. But I want to give a quick shout out to Nomad Bull Street, who has recently become very interested in the BCH community and has been talking to the community a little bit. And one of the things I found interesting was he was shocked that some BCH people did not know about Hyperliquid and were like, what is this? Like, just use BCH Bull. And for him, that was mind blowing. He was like, how do you guys not know about this, etc. And it's kind of like, you need to see it as like an uncontacted tribe on its own planet. Like, it's not that we have everything wrong or that we are out of the loop, but that doesn't mean we're clueless. You know, it's just kind of like, we're going to have built all our own stuff. And like any new culture that you find, like Avatar is, the new Avatar is out. I haven't seen it, but you know, like Jake Sully, you know, he goes to the Na'vi and it's like every story ever. He doesn't understand why they do certain things the way they do, and he thinks it's nonsense. And it's only with time he comes to appreciate it holistically, right?
It's so funny. We are the native Bitcoiners.
Yeah,
exactly. It's like really, but really living it. It's like there's other cryptocurrencies that we don't care about them, but we don't know them either. It's like they just do their thing, and we're building a whole ecosystem here. So yeah, walking the walk.
Yeah, it's just a question of culture, I think. You know, people, and we're going to see a lot of that. So I just think the BCH community should be aware. Like, people are going to come in and they're going to be interested in BCH, but then they're also going to have like an initial adverse reaction to it, because they're going to be like, wait, what everyone is saying here doesn't make sense. Like, I have a reason to be here, and I clearly can see there's some value, but at the same time, my instinct is to reject, you know, new things or new ways of looking at it that I don't understand, because it doesn't fit into the framework. Like, everything is internally consistent in BCH, but it doesn't look that way when you're arriving sort of at the edges.
But this is also what I noticed with that. This is where things have changed a lot, because people are coming in because of the price, right? That's the signal. Okay, we're back into the top 10. The price is going up relative to the market. People are coming in like, wow, okay, this looks pretty interesting. And they get the philosophy, they read a bit about it. It's like, okay, that's really cool. And then they go and explore a little bit, and then they get exposed to things like BCH Bull or BCH Guru or Paytac and what they're doing. And it's like, wow, there's a whole ecosystem here that's bubbling away. And that's really impressive. And a lot of that stuff, you know, when thinking about Cauldron as well, like this is really new stuff. Even BCH Bull, which is one of the eldest like products on BCH that dates back to what, 2022, 2023. So yeah, that's gonna, you know, people come for the price, they stay for the community, for everything that's there. And BCH is in a fantastic spot on that regard, and it's only set to grow. As Jonathan said, the ball is enrolling. None of us can stop that now, and that's great.
On that point about you know, what people come and then what they come for and then what they stay for, I'll happily eat my hat. I have a few. If there's some, you know, anyone prominent or just very clearly comes into BCH specifically for the actual thing that makes BCH super powered, which is the decentralization, like the real decentralization chip process, no central power holder and so forth. I've not seen a single person who, you know, correctly identified that, you know, coming in from the outside yet, but I'll be very impressed if anyone does.
It's a hard thing to do.
Well, I mean, to be fair, you know, that is kind of hard for anyone coming in fresh to get. I think, you know, but we could
That's such a sad statement.
we could brainwash them on the next best thing, you know, because Bitcoin now is no longer about BTC. Bitcoin BTC now is no longer about fighting the man, right? It is literally the man now. Like, it is the man to be fought against, and we are still fighting the man. And I think, you know, it is something that resonates with a lot of people, and you know, we are still in that role of trying to upset the existing order, and we are still doing that. People have claimed that it doesn't go anywhere. Well, here we are, and it has never been more in fashion. And you know, we could get them to take that part, and which is easy to get, and then tell them that, oh yeah, by the way, we are we are particularly good at this because, we, through our history, we rejected a bunch of other centralizing things that got us to where we are. We have a proven history of rejecting this kind of bullshit. Oh yeah, that is good. I think we could. I think it goes somewhere. That's what I think.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in and say that fighting the man is something that some people see as the purpose of Bitcoin, but others do not. And that if you go back to, say, 2011, 2012 or so, there was a lot of different reasons for Bitcoin to exist, and everyone kind of incorporated their own ideals for what it would do. And so I don't think Bitcoin is actually fundamentally about fighting the man, but I do think it's fundamentally about replacing the man, which is a much more positive thing than the let's fight something that's bad. It's like build something that is good instead, because that's like the purpose of a system is what it does. And Bitcoin as the technology itself, the idea, is about enabling transactions between individual peers. And that is effectively replacing the man rather than fighting it.
Oh yeah, and they, in some sense, they are basically two sides of the same coin, right? Like, you can't really fight the man if you don't have something better to replace it. And on the other hand, it is kind of difficult to get something better in place if something less good is controlling you, right? So they're kind of two sides of the same coin.
They are the two sides of the same coin, but I love what Jonathan's saying here, and I think this is something that's so important for Bitcoin Cash is the narrative. It's the narrative shift. There, even though the outcome might be the same, the narrative is insanely different, and it appeals to a wider lot of people because most people don't want to fight against anyone. They don't want to put themselves as a threat, but they do want to retain control over their own lives. They do want to be the man. And I think that narrative is super important, and it might seem the same for, I do agree, it's two sides of the same coin, but one story is incredibly positive and it's much more likely to attract and get the next 1 billion people using Bitcoin Cash, and the other one less so, more towards the sort of XMR guys and that sort of the more fringe side. So I like it, and I think it's a great point raised by Jonathan. I'm looking forward to sort of tapping into that a bit more on the whiteboard.
Yes, indeed. So before we get into that, my intro to this is we've got to put one little caveat to my plan for today, which comes from, I believe, the US military. I've just heard this as like hearsay. I don't know whether it's true, but I think it's a good point anyway. So apparently in the US military, they tell this story, which is that Russian military commanders were at some point known for saying something along the lines of, the problem with fighting Americans is that they feel no obligation to fight according to their own manuals and procedures, right? So the Russians would have a hard time defeating the Americans because they would say, oh, the American strategy book says that in this situation X, you should do Y. But then they would try and anticipate the Americans, who would then just, ignore that and completely disobey their own orders or do something, chaotic, which didn't make any sense. And the point is that a flexible and adaptable fighting force has to be more responsive to the conditions on the ground than the preparation. Like I think it was Napoleon also had that thing about, no plan survives contact with the enemy, or Mike Tyson says, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? It's all the same idea. So I think we can try and figure out here what would be a good BCH strategy for 2026. But the caveat is I fully expect that by halfway into the year, we'll have thrown this all out and we'll be on to something else because that's just being responsive to the conditions. But nevertheless, failing to plan is planning to fail. So we're going to start with Emergent, who prompted this entire discussion by messaging me to say, let's do an episode of the podcast and start by talking about building in public, which is the new direction, I guess, or the new attitude maybe of general protocols. And I think that's kind of the foundation of where we're going with this. So tell me about that, Emergent.
Yeah, sure. Let me make sure, is the audio working?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yes, I'd say build in public is just, I don't know, like one of the bricks of what we're working with. But yes, build in public. So we're trying to, So yeah, so to preface all this, right, a big part of the strategy, so to speak, for general protocols were overstated and so forth, but I really think this is true. It's the key to unlocking Bitcoin and making it accessible both to users and to entrepreneurs. Problems to be solved is so large that we realize we really have to just build in public so that other people see what we're doing, can give us feedback, we can hear what they think, we can tell other people what we think, because there's a bit of a back and forth process that needs to happen. Even within our team, we have pretty famously heated conversations sometimes about where things are going and what we should be doing and what we should work on, how it should work, and so forth. So yeah, I'd say XO, if it comes to strategy, is a huge part of what 2026 is going to be about. But of course, it's a really hard thing to say because it's something that won't be visible to anybody until it's mostly done. It's just the nature of these kind of infrastructure type things. But yes, XO is a big part of what I think in terms of strategy. But then at an even higher level is the same thing that I, and I'm sure others have been saying for many years, which is when you're trying to take over the world, you don't start at the top, you start in a niche. And I think Bitcoin as a whole is still hunting for and searching for those niches where it can grab a toehold, get a foothold, get a handhold, and actually start to build real economy and commerce. So 2026, just like last year, actually, I'm looking for entrepreneurs and people who are going to start businesses, start teams, and create products that solve problems for people. So that's what I'm looking for the most is XO, and then other people, other entrepreneurs coming onto the scene and making a splash.
Okay, so can you be a little more specific for me then? You've got this idea, you want to build in public, you want the XO project to be a part of that. What is that specifically going to mean? Does that mean you're going to be, I mean, I know you've been doing the blog posts, that's a good start, but the code is going to be out there. I think of things like in the Selene Telegram, we have the bot that pings everybody who's paying attention whenever we're merging new tickets and stuff like that. Specifically, what is building in public going to entail?
Yes, all those things you said, the blog, posting articles, all the code is open source, all those things that you said exactly. But again, a lot of these things won't really gain traction until they get to the point that builders can start to use it or users can start to play with it. And so until we get to that stage, it'll be less noticeable what's going on. But once we get to that stage, then yes, I expect to actually have a significant amount of discussion going on, among BCH developers, feedback saying, no, it shouldn't work that way. It should work this way. And as we have discussed with wallet makers, is going to be a big one because however exciting it is and however super amazing the technology is, if wallets don't adopt it, then what does it even mean to have the technology, right? So yes, it's going to be very quiet until it starts to reach the point that builders and then later users can play with it.
So can I jump in here? Because we have been talking about building in public, but from an outsider perspective, it might be hard to pinpoint what the building part actually is, right? And so if we start from a perspective that John shared, that if you build in isolation and you don't get feedback along the way, then you might build for the wrong thing and you don't identify a correct segment of the market where your product might actually be successful. So if we keep that in mind, and then we ask, what can we do as the first stepping stones? How can we start soliciting some feedback and how can we start to engage other people, right? We could, in theory, go to every wallet maker and demand that they look at all the things we do and try to steal their attention. But that won't work, right? Because they have their own priorities and we don't have a product that's finished and working, right? And so what we did was that we went from a state where like we have done internal research and we have done a lot of internal testing and building on our own side, and we started switching over to these articles, right? We started to share our motivations, and we started to share more clearly like the structure of what it is we are building, so that other people can look at what we are doing and come with feedback and tell us what they like and not like about that. And so far, that has had some degree of response, like we have had some feedback, but we haven't had anything they can actually play with. And so the feedback has still been fairly limited. People look at us and like, oh, okay, it looks good on face value, and this article is nice, or maybe this looks like it might work, but nothing tangible, like I want to use this for this specific thing where I think it's going to have this kind of impact on what I'm doing. Now, currently, we are in the process of cleaning up and packaging the first versions of the XO packages. And so somewhere in Q1 this year, it's going to be very obvious what we have built so far, like what the actual code is. And when we get to that stage and those packages are publicly released, then people can start trying to use them, right? They can try to use them in their own project. They can try to integrate things into their own wallets and whatnot. And what's important with the build in public perspective here is that when we get to that point, we need to be ready to actually listen to that feedback and start interacting with the people who are going to become the core stakeholders of this thing that we are building. Now, yeah, I think, does that give a better idea? Does that answer any of your questions, Jeremy?
A little bit. So I'm hearing that, okay, Q1, you want to have the packages out there, and then you've got to be ready to listen to feedback and iterate through the rest of the year to the end of 2026. You mentioned the core stakeholders. Who are they?
So again, like John said, like you have to find a niche in which where your product is actually meaningful, right? Where it's valuable and where people will end up actually using it. And so releasing the first libraries and making it possible for people to look at it and actually use it is the point in time where we can like solicit and ask people to take a more active approach to it. And some of the people who do are going to be people who commit to the idea and become those stakeholders. And they are gonna say like this specific thing in XO here, we really, really like because it solves this specific problem for us in a way that was difficult or costly to solve before. And now their feedback is going to be like highly valuable to us so that we can establish the foothold in that specific niche.
Okay. So some examples here would be like for wallet makers, somebody who makes a wallet, some of the features of the engine and the transport mechanisms of XO will be that you suddenly get a lot of intelligence for free. Like you want to have a multi-sig, some kind of vault wallet. And if you want to do that today, you better be one of the top experts in how BCH works and how Bitcoin transactions work and how to do things safely, how to deal with secrets safely and so forth. You have to be an expert on a long list of topics. But once you have XO, and it's the intelligence working in the background for you, and it has sorted out how to do all these things, now you get it for free. And you just say, hey, I want to do this multi-sig thing with that one, with that guy. And it says, okay. And it handles all the communication for you and so forth. So that's an example of one of the niches, just to make it a little bit more concrete. And then another one would be ourselves, people who are making apps, who want to do some kind of DeFi or some kind of authentication or identity systems or whatever it is that people want to do. Doing it today, again, means that you have to be a super expert and with deep knowledge in multiple topics in order to create such an app and have it in any way be safe or sensible. Whereas with XO, it's going to be much going to be great. That's the point that we have to reach, and that's where we're trying to get. Yeah, so actually, from the app perspective, we are the first target right? Because we have the biggest DeFi in BCH, biggest protocol in DeFi on BCH. And so we're looking at making that work better, making it work easier, making it more secure, making the user experience better, et cetera, for ourselves, which is something that we've been doing since 2018, right? We've been dogfooding our own infrastructure and libraries and so forth to just build layer upon layer to get to where we want to go.
Yeah, I'll actually jump in and share another example that might be closer to where Jeremy sits in our ecosystem. So assume you have a wallet and you want to integrate some external functionality, right? You want to integrate something like Cauldron, or maybe you want to implement an NFT vending machine directly inside of your wallet. Now, today, you would need to understand those services, like the Cauldron protocols and the contract and everything, or the vending machines, all specific details. And you have to be an expert at those things. But when XO is out there and someone has made a template for a vending machine, then you don't need to spend, I'm going to guess, less than 2 hours to get such an implementation actually working.
Okay, all right. Fiendish, what part of this is making sense to you and what part maybe isn't of what you're hearing?
No, I think it sounds great. A lot of it makes sense, and I'm really excited by this because I think the key aspect that I get from XO is we're taking a lot of complicated and very important aspects of what's required to be successful to release that great product and be an entrepreneur, leveraging like the decentralized permissionless power of BCH. And this makes this accessible to a much wider audience of builders. And I think this is one of the, I still hear this criticism. Why is BCH why is there so few builders compared to Ethereum? That's it. that's literally like bingo. That's the thing that XO is trying to solve. So I'm really excited by this, and to hear Q1 like that, I think that's the first time I've heard any sort of date of anything being released. So maybe I missed something, or if that's the first time that it's out there, that's great. That's an exclusive for you, Jeremy. And I really looking forward to seeing this, because I think this is going to be the key that unlocks BCH's success. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing the team prove that right.
Okay.
And not only doing what Ethereum has done, but doing it much better than what Ethereum did, right? We have the benefit of hindsight in seeing how things have gone so far and how they can be done better. And we definitely intend to take advantage of that.
Okay, all right. So Fiendish, no criticism. I'm not hearing any. There's nothing you're skeptical about here, or this is John specifically requested you to be on this call. So I'm looking to dig out a few insights from you in terms of where they're missing something.
I think so far, from what's been released, I think the blogs have been really important. I think XO have generated quite a lot of buzz around this, a sort of intrigue, and it sort of started off with just some very high level concepts. The blogs have got into some more wider detail into this. And I think that this is also very good for sort of just easing people into this mindset, easing people into this new thing that they're building. And so by the time that it does release, people are going to be like, oh, okay, there's going to be this familiarity, and it's going to help catch that wider audience. So at this particular point, from what I've seen, I think the strategy makes a lot of sense. I would love to have been a fly on the wall on some of the arguments. I imagine they would be very, very interesting. And what I think is the most important thing is those arguments that happened, a decision was made, there were compromises would be made, and now is execute and seeing the timeline locked in. I think this is the most important thing, is just to get something out there that was working, that's, even if it's the base block, a few ideas, a few templates that are working that people can start with and then grow from there. Because I think that is, I do agree with one of John's sentiments from, I think the first BCH Bliss, is move slowly and don't break things. We're talking about money here. And I like that sentiment. I wouldn't trust my money with an app or service that moves fast and breaks things. So I think that's a valid point. but I also do think that executing something safe and correct, built on a small scale, and then building up to that is a great way to go. So I'm very excited that release is going to be soon.
Jeremy, do you mind if I jump in real quick?
Ahead.
Yeah, so the way Fiendish described that was so interesting to hear. Like when you hear a different perspective on something, it kind of blows your mind. Saying that not that it was wrong, but that the first thing that we came out with was like these high level XO website and concept and description and everything. When really, like from our perspective, that was the end of this very long 5-year process of struggling with developing Bitcoin Cash apps and protocols and infrastructure and so forth. Like every part of it is just the result of very specific small details that just piled up and piled up and piled up. And that piling up is where we realize, like, oh my God, there must be a better way to do all of this mess that we've had to do. And yeah, so the final end result of kind of getting our mind in order and understanding these problems at a deeper level, and then taking it to a higher level of understanding how all these issues that we faced fit together and how things could be better. The end result of that, of 5 years of struggle, was the high level presentation, which is probably the first thing that anyone saw of it. And so that's very interesting. I thought I would mention that for anybody who's watching or thinking of being an entrepreneur or thinking of building stuff. You got to just start where you are and make things happen, because you can start from anywhere and make it work. But we're just trying to make it so that you don't have to go through what we did, and that we also don't have to go through what we did a second time as we go forward.
I just kind of want to jump in because I think John mentioned the 5 years of struggle, but didn't elaborate on that enough. I think is that within that 5 years of struggle was a significant episode where we mentioned a little bit earlier that it's how does it compare to EVM? Well, within that 5 years of struggle, we did dabble in the EVM world. The entire BCH dabbled quite a bit. Well, I wouldn't even say dabble. I would say like face first. We just jumped into the EVM world for a little bit before it all went upside down. So because we had experience in that, we kind of knew what was valuable from the EVM world and what we really didn't like. So that contributed significantly to the idea and the execution of XO. Like, it is going to be an improvement instead of just, we are going to take EVM and then we are just going to mirror it. The goal is to have something that looks 100% like EVM. That is not the goal. It's going to be an improvement, and it was informed by our own experience.
Badger wallet.
Yes. Okay. So I'm hearing a couple of things here. So the first thing, if I'm talking about the full year of 2026, I'm hearing that the goal, the vision, is making BCH power, script power, basically, accessible and easy to tap into. Does that sound right as a one-sentence summary? Is that the idea?
From users' perspective and builders, entrepreneurs' perspective, yes.
Okay, from users and builders. Okay. And what is the metric? What is the number that will tell you that you've hit that goal? What's your KPI?
Our own is revenue and profit, because we're going to make, for example, BCH Bull is an obvious thing to start with, right? You start with BCH Bull and you make it better and see how that goes. Can we actually increase revenue and make it more accessible to a larger audience of people? That's one. But from the BCH strategy perspective, from the higher perspective that I've been looking at for years, is how many new products get built, how many new protocols go into action and have real volume, right? Like actual liquidity and people using them. And that could be DeFi or it could be other things, right? Because I'm still firmly of the opinion that BCH and Bitcoin hasn't clearly identified killer niches, killer apps that will actively disrupt the status quo. That hasn't happened yet. I don't think it's happened in any of crypto yet. Maybe starting to happen with prediction markets. That's the closest that I've seen is prediction markets. And I think BCH could do prediction markets way better than they're being done elsewhere. So yeah, those would be my two. For us, it's revenue profit. And then overall, it's number of new products or services that actually have significant usage.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. The number of products, that's what I mean, there's a lot of KPIs is the information to sort of suggest what it is you want to achieve. Like, what is the overall thing you want to achieve? That's then your OKR, your objective and key results. Your OKR is like the thing, like, is that necessarily that you want more app builders? Maybe you want, but what you want is more success, which, how do you define this success? Revenue is a pretty great way in the business world. So the number of products, of course, this number of products, the number of apps, the number of new services that are being released, this is a pretty good indicator of success because, you have a great idea. There is still going to be some element of luck, even if you do have a great idea, if you have a great product. And so the more good and better products that are out there, the more chance there is of success. And it certainly shows then that the ecosystem is growing. And this is what I'd love to see. It's one of the things I said at the last Bliss. I'd like to see more products, or more entrepreneurs building those products, and more failures, because that will also be part and parcel of that. So more risk taking, more mistakes, more learning, more growing, more adapting, and then learning from that, and hopefully working with the EXO team to think about how to add even more possibilities, and then to hit it on the next one.
So I think that's actually a great point you said there. More failures. So I don't think most people know all the inside details, but the EXO project wasn't like an immaculate conception, right? It wasn't we woke up one day and we had this great idea and everything was clear to us. We have actually internally done a bunch of research. We've tried it in different ways, and we have had our fair share of failure, so to speak, our fair share of going in one direction, pivoting when it doesn't work, and learning along the way. We just haven't had like public releases where this process is very clearly outlined. But I absolutely do agree. And so one of the internal motivations for building EXO in the first place comes from the fact that we started building AnyHedge many years ago, and it took over a year just to get some basic infrastructure up, because we happened to coincide with the downfall of the Bitcoin.com API services and the SDK essentially not being maintained anymore, and so on. And so we had to do a bunch of pivots and rebuild things from scratch in order to get to a stable, reliable infrastructure where we could build AnyHedge and the BCH pool on top of it. Now, a couple years ago, we looked at where we are, and we wrote down a bunch of ideas for like, where could we go from here? How could we improve? What could we do new and better? And for almost all of the ideas that weren't minor improvements, right? Things that were actually significantly different, it essentially repeatedly came down to cost. Repeating the journey we had where we had to rebuild that infrastructure is not sensible in terms of cost. And so we started asking the questions I said earlier, like, how can we fundamentally do differently that doesn't result in this large cost when we want to do many new and different things? And so when we're talking key performance indicator, I have a feeling that from a GP perspective, being able to execute on the ideas we have and build the products that we want to build without being inhibited by this cost is going to be, of course, indirectly measured as revenue. But I think we're going to be able to look at the number of relatively high quality vetted templates. For example, which templates are going to be default in various wallets. If we end up having like one template that is vetted and used, then that's not a very good metric for our success. But if we see a continuously growing set of reliable, well-written, well-documented, well-tested, and audited templates, and that set is growing, I think that is going to be a very clean key performance indicator for whether the XO system is being adopted or not.
That's a great one. Yeah, number of well-created, high-quality templates will be good. And of course, people who are listening probably don't really know what the template means at this point. But if you go read our articles, you'll get a pretty good idea of what the templates mean. And I also just wanted to say, our name is General Protocols, not General Protocol. Although actually on Twitter, our name is General Protocol because it doesn't have enough characters to fit the S. But we never intended to just have one protocol. So yes, but we realized that having more than one protocol is going to require a better setup than what we've got today.
Here's the question I got. So I like this metric, and the number of templates is very easy to quantify. But the other point you mentioned there was high quality. And that is a qualitative, subjective judgment. How do we define, and how do you guys define high quality?
That actually won't be that difficult. It will be very hard to count the number of templates in general, impossible, because it's a decentralized ecosystem and there's no central gatekeeper. But for any wallet that is going, right, because you need a wallet to make use of anything, to make use of your money, to hold your money and make use of it. The wallet fundamentally is going to need to either decide by itself which templates it decides to trust by default, or it's going to defer to, delegate that trust decision to someone else, like General Protocols or whoever it is. So, for example, the number of approved protocols in General Protocols list will be a specific KPI that has a very particular number to it.
Okay, so
because to explain why that's important, these templates are the locus of trust in the XO universe. So once you decide that you trust a template, you are putting a huge amount of trust into it that has a very heavy meaning. And so you can't just take any random template and say, oh, because it's a template, it's safe. No, not at all. The template has so much power to tell your wallet what happens and how things work, that the templates have to be audited by someone you trust to say that when your wallet gives you information based on this template, that you can trust it. So it's a very key decision and heavy decision that a wallet maker has to make about which templates they trust. And then users themselves will probably be able to say, well, I don't care what the wallet says. I want to trust this one because I trust those people. So that will be a separate list, is the ones that people tend to accept, even if they aren't approved by their wallet maker.
And then, of course, each wallet maker can gather whatever statistics they want. They could, for example, do a per template statistics on how much volume the template has been used with. How often it has been used, by how many different wallet owners have used it, and so on. So each wallet maker can grab and calculate their own statistics to know what matters to them. But yeah, XO as a whole, in the end, it is going to matter in terms of revenue, right? That's the very end of it. But along the way, there are a lot of indicators that you can use to see whether or not that ecosystem is growing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not so thrilled about revenue as a metric. I understand from a business point of view, it makes sense and so forth, right? But that a lot of people have sold out a lot of visions on the way to.
Don't get me wrong, Jeremy. Right? So the revenue doesn't need to be your revenue, right? The revenue is,
no, but that's not what Jeremy's saying. Jeremy's saying like the revenue is a bit of a double-edged sword, right? Where it can convince people to do things that maybe they weren't intending to do originally, right, Jeremy?
Yeah, like my approach is do something that is valuable to people, and then the money kind of comes afterwards. But if you're just looking at
this is the important thing, Jeremy. The OKR. So the the KPIs are the things you measure to basically give you an idea, an indicator. That's what's important, an indicator of what's going on in your system.
Yeah.
And those indicators are probably driving what it is you want to achieve. And the OKR is the thing you want to achieve. And that's the question. What is it that we want to achieve, like collectively? Do we want to achieve that there's more revenue overall being made by people? That might be. Or is it that we want to achieve that Bitcoin Cash is used by more people? They're not necessarily the same thing,
Exactly.
even if one is driving the other. But and that's what's clear is what is the objective that you want to achieve? And then you look at the metrics as sort of monitoring that to see, and that's a great question, I think, like just what is it that we collectively, like in this room right now, what is it that we'd love to achieve in 2026?
This comes back to that point I made about when people come into BCH, I'll eat my hat if any of them actually correctly identify why BCH is powerful and what it is that the overall goal is, at least for, represented by the people in this room, perhaps. But yeah, that is the most important question: is what is all this actually going towards?
So that might be an objective, right? You don't just have one. Get one person, one prominent person joining Bitcoin Cash and declaring because of its decentralized nature, because then you've got a very clear goal. And then you can think, well, how do we want to achieve that? By getting more builders, by making it clear we've got these decentralized tools, just to sort of give some, ideas here. Because when you've got a very concrete goal of what you want to achieve, it's amazing how creative you can go to try and get that.
Right.
Because it's very clear what you want to get. And of course, if you set the right goal, that can have a huge impact, because everything you do will be to get that goal happening. That goal then is much more likely to happen. And if you achieve that goal, if the goal was right, that's going to be a real win for Bitcoin Cash.
Another side of that one is the things that you can't lose and still be meaningful. This is the one that made it just incredibly obvious to me back in 2015, whatever, that BTC had lost its way and was in real trouble, was that it was losing its permissionless nature. And this word permissionless is probably the key word that brought general protocols together. I would even say is this kind of shared understanding that if you lose the permissionless nature of Bitcoin, you have lost Bitcoin, period. And yeah, so sorry, just to add on what we want to get. And then another aspect is what you cannot lose and still be meaningful.
Right. Okay. All right. Very interesting. So I think Fiendish is onto something, but Emergent, you've got to steer the ship a little bit here. So you've mentioned a couple of times this idea that, you don't think you would be shocked if somebody came in and didn't get it, and so, or got it right, realized, okay, with the chip process, decentralization, blah, blah, blah. So you don't think somebody will identify that. So one approach is what Fiendish said, make that the goal and then work out, in reverse how we can make that happen. But the other path, which you can pick between these two, is, does that matter? Why are you mentioning this? Is it because you think that's essential or would be really valuable, or is it, are you bringing it up for some other reason?
Yeah, I guess for the thing that I just said, where there's things that you cannot lose that are critical, that you absolutely cannot lose, or else you've lost any real meaning to the thing that you're working on, in this case Bitcoin. And the reason that's in the back of my mind is that the eternal September, in a negative way, the eternal September, as the number of people comes into a project and the number of people starts to explode, it can get completely from the original purpose or perspective, get derailed, right? And from the new people coming in, be like, it's amazing because it does all these other things that don't have anything to do with the original purpose. And I think this is exactly what happened with crypto overall, right? Like the original purpose has completely been forgotten by the vast majority of people who are involved today. So how do you keep that on track? How do you make sure that Bitcoin remains permissionless as it goes ahead and develops all these new things and grows the number of entrepreneurs and users and so forth? And does that really matter? To me, it matters very much. It's the only reason I'm here. Yeah, so I guess I hadn't thought about it, but that's why it's in the back of my mind, is because I've seen that concept of permissionlessness be lost over and over and over again. People not getting it. And so, yeah, I think that is a critical thing that has to be remembered and has to be kept at the center of mind. And I guess I was just joking about it, people coming in, but it is a very important point.
I think it's a really valid point. I don't know, Jeremy. So you've got the whiteboard up. Can you write something on there? Can you write like?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
That's what would be great is to put some objectives. Actually,
I'm just doing it on my piece of paper here.
I
think that's the only.
Yes.
High tech. That's what I love. With
trust,
high tech chain.
Trust, don't verify. Trust the strategy, don't verify.
Well, maybe
I think this is a great point. What I think is like the way to like whiteboard and white map is just put all of the ideas on, right? Rather than pick them apart too soon. It's just we've had this idea. Someone's mentioned it. Stick it up there. And I think this is that's another one, a second one or a third one. Is as an objective. Is to ensure that Bitcoin Cash stays decentralized, or the narrative stays decentralized. How you want to phrase that, is something else to discuss. That's a really important goal.
Participation must remain permissionless. Is even more important than the word decentralized.
Permission. Okay, participation must remain permissionless. That's an interesting one, and everything that goes around that, because this ties in a little bit into the discussion that we had. Before Christmas on the BCH podcast, was that Bitcoin Cash is this decentralized technology. Anyone can use it. It's nice to think that the people here have some power in that, but that's not true. There's no gatekeepers. Anyone can use that, and anyone can build things on it. So how do you keep that cultural aspect of permissionless money and permissionless tech right at the forefront? And that's a really interesting conversation. How often should you talk about it? Where should you be talking about it? How do you ensure that culture doesn't get eroded by other people? Because I do agree with you. I think this is a huge topic. And if our eye's not on the ball, we'll just assume it's a given. And all of a sudden it isn't a given anymore. And Bitcoin Cash has grown hugely.
Absolutely. There's a little bit of a lesson, I don't know, like a life lesson that I think is worth mentioning, which is a lot of people in Bitcoin and this kind of tech stuff tend to be quite idealistic in a lot of ways. And it's important to remember that you have to achieve it, but everything has a time window, right? And you don't have to be perfect for the rest of eternity. We have to achieve something great, and it has to be great, and it has to last for long enough. That doesn't mean it has to last for 1 billion years, right? And so there are meaningful timeframes that Bitcoin needs to remain permissionless. And if it does, until it's successful enough, then that will become the nature of the thing, and it will be understood implicitly by all the participants that the permissionless nature is something that you cannot change, or else you lose it. And so I think we just have to get to that point where the permissionless nature of it is so valuable to enough people that it becomes implicit that it needs to be kept.
So let me jump in here and go from theory to a bit more practical perspectives. All right, so we're talking about the permissionless and permissionless access in this context. And if you're looking at it from the purely blockchain perspective, then it is already permissionless, and there is nothing on the horizon that would indicate that it would stop being permissionless. But the blockchain itself is not what most people use, right? Most people use tools in order to interact with that blockchain and with that network. And so if we look at those tools, we can ask some questions that relates to the permissionless part. So if we were to be self-critical, right? Let's talk about the BCH bull, right? Is the BCH bull permissionless? Well, the Ethernet protocol that it uses is permissionless, but the actual application user could be considered to be permissioned because your access to it is dependent on someone else providing that access to it, right? If you go to app.bchbull.com tomorrow and it doesn't give you a website anymore, it gives you a "sorry, we don't exist anymore" button or indicator, then your access to the BCH bull have practically been removed. the blockchain is still there, the contracts are still there, maybe all your counterparties are still there, maybe all the oracles or the infrastructure are still there, but it doesn't matter for the end user who has a simple pattern of go to app, use app. If the app goes away, they have effectively lost access. So the app functions as a permission provider, right? It gives you access to things when it wants to, and it stops doing it when it no longer wants to, which means that the app has some control that, in our context here, shouldn't be there. Now, for BCH Bull, it had to be this way, because otherwise we couldn't have built it in the first place. The tech, the tool, the infrastructure wasn't there to make a fully permissionless setup actually practically viable. But with XO, we are able to remove one of the last like nagging, this is not perfect parts from the BCH Bull app, such that as soon as you use an XO wallet and you make and do things on that website, if the website were to go away, you will still be able to go into your own wallet where you yourself have the template and interact with that contract directly on the blockchain through that template without needing the application at all, making it so that the website app.bchbull.com is no longer a provider of permission. It is merely a guide that helps you better understand or guide you towards some specific goal or part you want to be in. And I think for the vast majority,
and there's actually multiple aspects like that. There's multiple aspects where using a different approach like XO starts to push the power back out to the individual instead of centralizing it towards large organizations, large companies, large networks. It pushes that power out. There's multiple aspects of it. Yeah, sorry to interrupt, gentlemen.
Yeah, I'll continue. So we can actually see from the way that the EVM world has developed over time that despite being intended as something that is permissionless, it has actually set up these patterns where users can't really do things unless they seek third-party to help them do it, right? They can't do things on their own. They have to have some kind of app that they connect to that helps them do the thing. And then in their wallet, they essentially say yes or no to a bunch of questions they don't understand. So in my perspective, essentially all of the EVM and essentially all of the other crypto ecosystems that I have seen, they are all involuntarily permissioned by having this design underlying and empowering their wallet ecosystems.
Okay, so I don't know if you guys can see here, I'm just trying to make this a little bit of a graph. So it seems like everybody agrees the BCH blockchain is permissionless, and then you got the AnyHedge part. You feel like that's permissionless, and right now you've got the BCH Bull sitting on top of that, but that's not really that permissionless. I mean, it's not open source, and if you guys shut it all down, maybe people could use those recovery tools to kind of get by, but everything would be stalled at that point, essentially. So XO routes around that. So you then, the layer after that is sort of the wallets. I don't know if you guys think that that is sufficiently permissionless or what can be done there.
I think it's a matter of degrees, right? You want to push responsibility, ownership, however you want to frame it, as far out to people as you can. And there's never going to be a such thing as a perfect world or a perfect universe. But we're definitely trying to get out as far as our brains can understand that they get out. And you mentioned the wallet, and currently that would be the place that you reach where it says, okay, if you can't trust your wallet, then indeed you're fucked. It's kind of the position that you're in, yes.
Is there something we can do
but
mitigate
then there's
that,
an issue of access to wallets, right? But well, yes, there's something you can do with it, and at least it's not everything. But there's the aspect of XO, right? Yeah. So the aspect of XO is that it's going to be a standard that we don't intend to like, oh, you have to go through license GP code or some silly thing like that, right? It's going to be a standard. where somebody can implement the engine, somebody can implement the wallet, and so forth, using the XO standard. So once you get to the place that building a wallet is a relatively trivial exercise, like today you can go on code building boot camps and websites and be like, build a Twitter clone or build an Instagram clone, and it's nothing, right? You can do it in a day, you can do it in a few hours. We need to reach that point where it's so trivial to make a good wallet that you have effectively removed the gatekeeping issue around wallets. So that's the best I can get today in our understanding of where we're going to get with XO.
Jonathan, just as a small ask, I can hear your wonderful family in the background. I think it might be good if you were to mute. Just
They're also
as lovely as it is to hear their voices.
I would really like to kind of push back on myself, though, because it's a conversation we haven't had for years, actually, like very much out in the open. But this aspect of keeping the network and participation in the network, both mining and for users, permissionless, is that even something that you guys here in the room agree with? This used to be something that got debated to death back in the BTC BCH split days, but it doesn't really come up all that often these days. But it is baked well into the chip process. If you look at the chip process, it's made in a way that is permissionless, right?
Well, I mean, for one, we do have some forks who believe a lot less in permissionlessness than we do.
Yes.
They're not doing that well, let's just say. So I think over time, the concept, the debate kind of settled itself. Yeah.
Has it? I didn't know so much about that. I mean, I agree. Like, there's some extent to which mining is open in the sense that anybody can just start mining. All you need is access to energy and computer chips, and the universe doesn't care where you get either of those things as long as you can do it somewhat economically, right? So there's been no ability to shut people out of that so far, and maybe like BSV or whatever took that to an extreme and kind of screwed the pooch on that part of it. But at the same time,
they tried to lock it up where you had to identify yourself. They wanted miners to identify themselves.
They're just not competent enough to actually get it done.
that was also part of the problem, right? But that said, right, there are crypto communities which are very heavy on the concept of everyone should be able to CPU mine, one miner, one vote, having a different algorithm that is ASIC resistant, which I think is a bit of a myth, but they like that idea of, and it's maybe even if they haven't figured out the right implementation, it's coming from the right idea of how can you make mining more permissionless. Other ideas in this vein are things like open sourcing the circuit diagrams and stuff for mining hardware. What is the ability for people to verify popular mining rigs as not being backdoored, that kind of stuff, which is not something that maybe the BCH community has been thinking about in quite a while because we've had a lot of other problems. But maybe that's where we're starting to see like that now. That's something we've got to start thinking about again if we want to get sort of a full stack of green check marks, on this diagram.
It is a question that probably will come up on our way, all the way up to restore and eventually exceed the glory that a lot of other coins seems to be at. But I mean, yeah, you're right that for the longest time, even today, the thing about mining is that we kind of collectively deemed it a good enough thing for now, and just there are other better things to worry about. But we will eventually come back to this. It's not like there are some purists who would claim that okay, the way Satoshi did everything was absolutely perfect. Well, it was not, and we indeed had quite a few modifications and revisions to how the things are actually done. Some of them to fix bugs even, and the whole pool mining thing only rose like much later. It was not perfect. It was not perfect, but it's, most of the things are good enough for now, and there are definitely room for improvement that we can revisit. But it's kind of both up to interest, and we're simply not at a point where the interest level is there yet, I think.
Okay.
But it is worth saying, actually, if we go back to the framing that I had originally, which is there are things that you cannot lose, and if it ever arose that mining somehow became just massively centralized, where there's a clear gatekeeper who can control how things go, or any aspect, right, happens like that it suddenly becomes not permissionless, then that is a very relevant thing to look for. And until then, I'm on the boat with Uname, where we say we decided this was good enough, and we have plenty of other things to worry about at the moment. So just keep going and try to get there in the end.
It's an interesting point, though, because how do you monitor it? And this is what I think is a really interesting question.
Yeah, and I mean, I want to emphasize that it's good enough. It doesn't mean that it's objectively like good. Like I would say that it's objectively not good for now. Because for one, we don't even have to get to the hardware designs or, is it ASIC or is it CPU? We don't have a good enough scalable pool software that anyone can use. We have a couple pool software that we can use. Callan maintains an excellent pool software for small scale projects, but it's not very scalable for larger scale operations. And over the years, P2 pool just kind of atrophied to death. And the larger mining pools, none of their software is accessible. So if someone wants to start a mining business today and just want to start where it's medium sized, it's kind of hard, actually. It's kind of hard to remain independent. You would just have to pick one of the bigger pools, and it's kind of hard to have a competitive pool running. I would say that before we even get to hardware, like software is a problem. But it's not perfect. We can see where the problem is, but we have other problems to worry about today. So.
Well, maybe we do, but maybe we don't. That's what we're talking about on this call. I mean, it's a little bit of a shame in one way, because I've spent the last at least year, maybe a little longer, trying to slowly poke and prod at Mechanic, because he is the exact person that is very concerned about, mining centralization and the problems with that and all the various things that have gone wrong. And he's having a hard time for a number of, a wide variety of reasons, but he's having a hard time getting buy-in on this mission because he's so busy with fighting the problems in the BTC ecosystem at any other layer. That is where I would love to have him, giving us some insight into, what the current state of affairs is and how things can be done. But in saying that, maybe we do need to do the same thing that we've done with other stuff, for instance, like governance, like scalability, like wallets, which is we're only going to build credibility that people will start to rethink by just figuring it out ourselves, doing a better job, and then making that public until word starts to get around. I mean, I'm here on the BCH podcast after, nearly 5 years of doing it. I don't think we've had any episodes focused on mining, really. I don't know. I have vague ideas of like who some of the miners are and stuff, but never been to a mining farm, never run one of those little BitAxe things. Yeah, never even had someone on the show to talk about it, just because I haven't had all that many contacts in the scene. They haven't organically come up. And even the ones that have, I can think of 2 examples, although I won't say them, certainly did not get off on the right foot. We had a bit of personality clash. But anyway, that's just to throw it out there. What if that is something that has been unaddressed in the Bitcoin scene, that it's time for the BCH community, even if we don't have the most hash rate or clout in that area. And that's one thing where the BTC side does drive things very heavily. It's very noticeable at like when Callisti talks about going to the BTC conference, he's like, there's mining stuff everywhere. A lot of the other stuff they don't have, but they have mining because people are making money in mining with the number go up and the block reward, right? So is that something where the BCH community needs to start making a better effort of, you know, building industry contacts and figuring out what we can do to help these problems?
I think that would be a very hard place to start, right? Because just less than 1% of the price / hash rate, right? It's the same thing. So, and the actual operation from the miner's perspective is very similar. So it's just a non-issue for a lot of them, not something they really want to spend time thinking about. I think it would be very tough to that would be a hard one. There's no open niche to jump into, right? So I think this is one of those ones that's going to naturally come out as interest, as price increases, which necessarily makes hash rate and the balance of the value that miners get out of BCH versus other crypto, as that increases, I think it's just going to naturally happen that we start to get more attention. And as people have come into BCH, specifically, I can note in the BCHN, one of the nodes for BCH, the BCHN has a Telegram, and the number of people coming in there from BTC and probably from BSV and possibly from other places has obviously increased, because all of a sudden there's all these people talking about mining, like you said, whereas before there was almost none. And so there's clearly an influx of people who are interested in mining pools and setups like that. So I think that interest is going to increase naturally, and we'll probably start to see projects and funding and proposals and so forth come out regarding that. I guess the most you could say is we could offer guidance, but I doubt these people want guidance from us. So
no, but that's what I'm saying. It's a catch-22. Like on one hand, if we say it's kind of hard, once we're bigger, we'll get around to it, which has kind of been my attitude so far, and I think that's been correct. You know, we've got to prioritize, but then, like you say, we don't have credibility for those same reasons. It's a catch-22, and maybe it is beholden on us to figure out, okay, even if it is going to be hard, that's no excuse. I mean, hard problems, that's what we're here to solve, is how do we start building some credibility in that mind, even if we start in a small way, even if the BCH community just starts doing some more research. One of the things I find fascinating is there was this BTC Telegram group that they made a while ago called, it was like called MEV Problems or something like that. And the idea was all of those covenants and all this stuff gets stalled because somebody just comes in and says MEV is going to destroy everything if we have like CTV or whatever, and that's been an excuse to stop covenant proposals and so forth from being technologically developed and implemented. Now, of course, that's part of the hijacking. That's actually nothing to do with MEV. But regardless, the idea is there that nobody, as far as I'm aware, has done significant research on the impacts of MEV, specifically with regards to proof of work stuff and like cash VM. Like that is an area where you can go to them and there's people freaking out and, oh, you know, if we have DEXs, then it's all going to turn into a nightmare and et cetera, when BCH now has those projects because we don't really think it's going to be an issue, but we also don't have, like, beyond the fact that it hasn't happened, we don't also have super hard proof that it won't be as the scene grows and gets more complicated. What about that as an area to begin with?
I volunteer Bitcoin Cash Autist, who has proposed the 1 minute blocks, because this is fundamentally due diligence on that chip. But it's one of those things where, like, the tail wagging the dog, you know, like this chip that is fundamentally straightforward in its concept, but the amount of things in the constellation of issues is enormous and heavy compared to the proposal itself. So even though the proposal is well made, yeah, I'm half joking, right? That this is actually due diligence for the 1 minute blocks chip. Yeah. Who's
so
going to do it, right? You have limited resources, but is it an important thing to do? probably, like, for example, I would say the best argument for doing it is to front run the efforts to make mining compliant with, whatever financial regimes. As soon as mining becomes fully compliant with identifying every party and so forth, Bitcoin is dead. So that would be the biggest argument, is front running all of the efforts to bake Bitcoin into bake the financial frameworks into mining.
Which, by the way, is kind of the reality already in proof of stake, because
Right.
because of KYC, because it made KYC exchanges easy to participate in terms of staking, and that's exactly what they did.
Right. So, I mean, this is what the diagram is telling me is that if we want to have essentially this users bubble here, and then wallets, the infrastructure is basically represented by XO, the protocol level, the blockchain, and then the mining. We essentially want to have all green boxes here that we can say at every level the infrastructure is, or the project BCH is sufficiently permissionless. And at least so far, we've had a lot more interest in talking about this mining area. And there's a lot of points here that on the wallet, it was just kind of like, yeah, well, that'll be buildable by AI. I mean, we already have fairly good options in that regard, like Paytaka, Selene, Cash and Eyes are all open source. If you guys are producing a wallet, that's 4 wallets. Opt-in as well, the Jerry's doing. So we already have it's clear we're doing a much better job on this yellow square than this yellow square yellow. I guess it's a square as well. Yeah.
I'd like to go going back to the original point and thinking about also what, like, John, you were saying you would love it if someone was to come to Bitcoin Cash because of its important properties that is permissionless, right? And that's why, like, from my experience, that's why most of us are here, and we're aware of it's so important. But okay, why would they come to Bitcoin Cash? Because it's permissionless, they would need to know about that. And then, going back to that question, like, how would you monitor this? Like, how do you know when we've become less permissionless? When do we know when it's a threshold, like, this is getting dangerous now? It's the kind of thing that over time, I can imagine very much when the price of Bitcoin Cash goes up, lots of new people join the ecosystem, that gets lost very quickly. Absolutely. And by the time that you realize it's lost, the inertia is there and it's changed in a different direction. And so if you were to start measuring this today, like if someone was to, and of course this is someone problem, but if it was to be measured, like all these different things, we've got all these different boxes that could be green, and you make a metric out of that, like this is how decentralized it is because, and the research in there, and making that research very open and public, that has 2 things. One, it allows you to actually monitor permissionless, which means a KPI that you can monitor to see if we're actually achieving our OKR. Are we going in the direction of more permissionless? If not, which is a good thing. And the second thing is, because there's so much effort and it's public, and we can see, like, we've actually got metrics of measuring permissionless. We are very permissionless, and where we're not, we're doing everything we can to make it more permissionless. Is that not also something that's really going to make someone go, I'm going to go to BCH? Exactly, because it's permissionless. Look at all the focus these guys are putting on it. Like, that's a really important thing. And then going back to the original point, this, in my mind, it seems like there's so many other important things to be doing. I get it. But if we all agree that permissionless is really important, and without that, there is no Bitcoin, and BCH needs to survive long enough to be globally successful, so it's so ingrained that it's just innate, people get that. Probably we should be focusing on this. That probably is a pretty good goal. Just taking everything that's been said here.
Yeah, so I actually, a couple times every year, tell people about the Bajali's paper on the Nakamoto consensus coefficient, and tell people that if anyone ever wants to build a tracker using this metric for our ecosystem, I would be super, super happy and grateful about it. Because I believe that the research on at least one good way to start doing these things is already done. But there is still work to be done to actually implement that research and build the tracking part of it.
Okay, so I mean, without getting into it's a someone problem and forcing someone to volunteer on the spot, I think what Fiendish was saying is sort of, what I was getting at with this top circle here about users and culture. So I will say, in terms of knowing with any different square, but especially this one, as to how decentralized we are, I think it's hard to quantify exactly, but you can basically identify where there's main hubs of community discussion. So I would say between Telegram, which there's a lot of different channels, but as a whole, there's quite a lot of important chat happening on Telegram, right? Then there's also somewhat Twitter, interestingly less recently, because the main thing to do on Twitter is just point out to the rest of crypto, like, how great we're doing. I find it very interesting that the BCH community doesn't argue much in general because we're well aligned, but it also especially doesn't argue on Twitter because there's like nobody's blocked. Nobody is like, I want to build this, but I can't. And then somebody else says, well, you shouldn't be able to. And then it devolves into an argument, right? We don't have that dynamic, at least at the moment. So regardless, I'd say Telegram and Twitter are both like if Telegram got shut off, the BCH community, I feel, would quote unquote like regenerate fairly rapidly, because people would hear via Twitter, via BCH research, maybe via the podcast and sort of GP spaces are the two as well there, that you could replace those. And it's important because like Reddit is definitely like dead, quote unquote, right? Like not a lot of very important chat from people who are moving and shaking in the community is happening on Reddit. And recently, even just yesterday or this morning, people were talking about that, like, what happened to that? And the answer was obviously got taken over in the block size war. And then the same thing happened with RBTC. And now like FireDuck is the moderator or whatever. And that's just like basically like a lost cause. Like it's just fighting too far uphill. But it doesn't matter because things got reworked onto these other places, right? But in the same way that you want 3 or 4, at least 3, and ideally 4 to X or 4 to N wallets, you want the same with discussion venues, and then you want the same with like mining pools and stuff at the other end, right? So I think we could definitely do a better job of making this kind of idea, this diagram, but making it a little bit prettier and having links and proof so that people could see, what I'm talking about here. Like you guys already intuitively know that because you're into it all day, every day. But for people who are just showing up and are like, oh, BCH looks kind of cool, like, how do I know this is legit? You could do a lot to help them verify that for themselves faster, if you know what I'm saying.
I have a specific one on this point, which is an anti-indicator. The number of channels or groups that are called BCH something that look like something official BCH, right? Because we had infinite number of interactions right in the past where somebody's like, well, what's the official BCH email? What's the official BCH Telegram? What's the official BCH Twitter? And it's just mind-boggling that somebody can even ask that question and not just instantly be overwhelmed with with the conflict of that statement. But so any kind of thing like that, like I'd actually kind of like to eliminate anything that looks BCH official and make it so that everything has a clear affiliation with whoever it is that's running it, as opposed to just BCH. Like the general protocols BCH group, or the BCH podcast BCH group, something like that. So that would be one, is a lack of anything that looks official or claims to be official.
Well, that's a tricky one. I'm sure Fiendish has got to chime in on this, because on one hand, you don't want to say this is the official thing, the official website, the official Telegram group, the official anything. You can't do that. But people who are arriving for the first time, and especially if they're new to crypto in general, are not expecting to suddenly like, oh, here's this thing, and nobody. It seems like nobody is responsible for anything if they come in with that impression. They go, "Where's the official this?" And somebody immediately said, "There's no official this," and they're like, "Oh." So I wanted a source of information that I could reasonably trust and that was up to date and, you know, well maintained. And you just like shouted me off over some philosophical concern that I'm completely unaware of and don't get like at all. So they're
Oh yeah, no, I have no argument against network effect, and in fact, I think it's incredibly short-sighted to think you can fight with network effect. So yeah, I don't have any argument with saying this is by far the most popular and best resource in my opinion. The only thing I was saying was the giving the image of being official is.
But what I'm saying is there's a thin line between something being official and something being credible, and they're very overlapping, especially in the minds of somebody who's not appreciating all this.
Right, but what we're talking about is this kind of, like Fiendish said before, like the culture, the approach, the mindset. And if you can establish a mindset and an approach where it's very clearly anti, verboten or just, looked down upon, to set up something that looks official, that is one aspect of establishing and helping to propagate the maintenance of the permissionless nature of it, is having that culture. So that's what I mean. If there is a culture like that says like, hey, you're making this thing that looks like an official BCH thing, that's not really good, you should probably change it. If there's enough social pressure against doing things like that, then probably is a good thing.
Finish.
Yeah, I think this is a great topic, and I think so I agree with the outcome, the desired outcome. I have some question marks maybe about the execution. So fully, like, first of all, I guess it's easiest to say where it's fully aligned. Anyone that says official BCH is the black ball, right? That's uncool. That's not correct, and it absolutely goes against the ethos and change the culture. What I think is, recently Matthew got the name Bitcoin Cash for the Telegram channel, and I think that's a great thing. I think so. Of course, now it's labeled just Bitcoin Cash. That people might assume, oh, this is the official Telegram group, right? That's logical. And do I think it's responsibility of the admin and owners to ensure that people are well educated, that there is no official group and this is just a volunteer group? Yeah. So I'm totally aligned with that. And I think that aspect needs to be rigorously reinforced. We've got the Bitcoin Cash OG. Twitter, it does the same thing, speaking on behalf of Bitcoin Cash in the sense of like broadcasting what's going on in the ecosystem, but makes it very clear, on once a month or whenever, there is no gatekeepers, there is no official Bitcoin Cash account. And so I think it's getting that right balance, because for Bitcoin Cash to have success as permissionless money, it has to go on that delicate path of remaining permissionless, because without that, project's over, fully aligned. But it also needs to have that critical mass, that network effect. And for the average person who just, they hear about Bitcoin Cash, they want to be able to just go to that group that, oh, okay, this looks like Bitcoin Cash, or this is following the Bitcoin Cash Twitter. And there you're going to get that critical mass. And I think that as long as we're seeing that balance, so if we've got Bitcoin Cash groups and that are really making it clear that this is a decentralized network, I think we're okay with that balance. I agree with you though. I think it will be a better sign to the ecosystem. And I do agree with the metric that if we see more organizations, centralized organizations, it can be absolutely, there's a CEO or whatever, or there's a leader, but they're branding their information as Bitcoin Cash with their logo. I do think this is a great signal of the ecosystem becoming decentralized and more decentralized. So I do agree with the KPI, but I do think we should be very wary of doing that like really strongly right now, because I think if we were to take that like black and white approach of really like pushing anyone out that uses the Bitcoin Cash logo, for example, I think this would be more detrimental to the BCH's growth without having a meaningful positive impact on the permissionless state.
I just want to add one bit of context, like in the case of Telegram channel getting official Bitcoin Cash handle, that is a huge improvement over the previous status quo, like objectively, because previously, for the longest time since the ABC split, the Bitcoin Cash handle has been occupied by, has been occupied somewhere we really didn't want it to be. So that's why we had BCH channel in the first place. So right now we got the handle back. That is a huge improvement. Point blank. Yeah, I just want to provide.
I couldn't agree more. And this is the other thing to think about. Also with Twitter. So everyone, I know, Jeremy, we've had this discussion in the past. No one should use the Bitcoin Cash handle. Well, it's available now for anyone with a business. Anyone.
Yeah.
So do we want to be naive about that? Or would we rather have it in the hands of people that are saying, hey, there is no official account, but I'm sat on it anyway, and I'm going to use it for the best as possible? And I think it's just a pragmatic approach to that. But again, fully aligned with the fact, if anyone listening, please never try and make out that there is an official channel. There isn't, or official Twitter or Telegram or website, because that is absolutely detrimental to the ecosystem and everything that it stands for. So I think on that point, we're very aligned.
Yeah.
Can I hop in here?
You said it very well.
Like the official in this context doesn't mean anything, right? Like there is no way for there to be an official Bitcoin or BCH or like any. So like.
Oh, but it takes on meaning if it becomes believed.
Yeah, but
right?
this is the Bitcoin Cash.
If it becomes believed in a social context, then that's a huge problem.
So it matters if somebody can capture the story that we've seen that this is what the whole "I'm the real Bitcoin" thing is, and of course that's slowly.
This is what BSV tried to do to BCH also.
Yes.
Every single person that I meet, every single exchange, every single crypto business person, they ask me the same things. So where's the official Bitcoin Cash website? Where's the are you officially working for Bitcoin Cash? Like the conversation's always the same, and
every time.
Every time, and also with people who are really like they've been in crypto, they've been in Bitcoin since very early, right? So this is something we take that for granted. I had discussions with John about this, and it's been kind of funny when I've had these meetings. It's just like, wow, this really is the case, and I get to educate about that, and and I compare Bitcoin to the internet and other amazing decentralized technologies that, of course, there's no CEO. Everyone gets to use it, and we all get to do our thing on it, and that's an eye opener. But it's not what people assume, and for sure, if in those meetings, if I was to say, yeah, I'm official working for Bitcoin Cash, and by the way, my website is the official Bitcoin Cash website,
they would believe you.
They would believe me, and I could quite quickly make a lot of people believe that to the detriment of the coin. And of course, if I could do that, so could anyone else. Which means that, and you only need a very small percentage of organized people working against something to be successful. And so that means we need to be likewise organized on a certain messaging about being permissionless and making that very clear. Now, do I see a problem with Bitcoin Cash podcast? I think the Bitcoin Cash podcast is very obvious in every way possible that it's its own thing and it's an independent thing. And I don't think that there's any sort of, I think you'd have to be pretty naive to assume, well, after watching this, that Jeremy or this podcast is trying to make out that it is officially linked to BCH. So I personally don't see any problem with that. I'm guessing John doesn't either, but I don't want to speak for him. But I do. But I think the sentiment is, nevertheless, is quite correct and surprising. I know it seems to be surprising to you, Jet, but that
the whole thing just seems awkward to me. Like because it's an absurd word to use in this context. To me, it's a joke.
People don't know that. That's the key. That's what.
But it's also absurd that Bitcoin had to split into BTC and BCH, right? That was also incredibly absurd to observe. It was like, this can't be happening. This is completely absurd, and it happened.
Well, I mean, it happened. But the point is, because one of the interesting things is in 20 years or in 50 years or whatever, everybody will just have this quote unquote like passive knowledge of how blockchains work, right? The same way that there was, you know, in the 90s, there was those TV shows like, what's an email address? What is this funny like @ sign, etc. And nowadays, everybody just kind of knows, okay, how an email address, etc. And in the future, like it will just be like, yeah, of course I know what a blockchain is. Yeah, of course, cryptocurrencies fork, and of course they split, and you know the BCH community then wreck the BTC community, and da da da. Like that will just be passive information that everyone has in the future. But right now, we're in the transition period where people are learning that, and we have to educate them one by one by one. And in the case specifically of BCH being a split with BTC, that information has really been getting out there. Like even 3 or 4 years ago, which is still a long time after the BTC split, and you know, there's all the propaganda, like there's the block size war book came out there, and even though some of that was wrong and didn't frame things correctly, it still got people the idea, oh, this is what happened. There was one chain, there was a fight, then there was 2 chains. People on one side think one thing, people on the other side the other thing, etc., right? So people are slowly understanding, oh, this is how a money can work, because they're not familiar. Like there's no analogy to that. The Australian dollar just became, you know, the New South Wales and the Victorian dollar. Like that's not a thing, right? So people are getting this concept over time passively. But in the meantime, so in the future, you'll be right. If everybody knew what you knew, then it would be impossible to scam anyone with this is the official whatever. But we're in this transitionary period where so much of the world is vulnerable to that messaging that we have to navigate that until we get there, I think.
It's like in the current context, right? It's very hard. I mean, there are monarchists and so forth, but it's very hard to argue with too straight of a face that, you know, monarchy is like a real monarchy, where the monarch is actually powerful. Has ultimate power, is competitive with other more modern forms of government. They're just not that competitive, and it's people don't even probably understand exactly why, but they know that they're not. And I think a similar thing will be true with the unit of account, or the units of account that exist in this future world. Will be that it's obvious. It'll be so obvious that it's not even worth talking about or thinking about, that giving a government the control of the unit of account is insane. And it will just be a given that that's not the way things work, and that it works on these, you know, permissionless networks. But until we get there, yeah, like you said, we're vulnerable to that narrative.
Highly vulnerable.
Basically.
Yeah. And what I also do think is, though, everything that's happened on Bitcoin Cash, so it's up until now, it's been more of a negative narrative because of like the fork and everything. But I really do believe, like, and that can be also part of 2026, is really reinforcing the narrative that the Bitcoin Cash narrative is incredibly strong. The Bitcoin Cash community have fought for permissionless right from the word go, and that's what, you know, led to all of the forks. So, you know, with BTC, we've got with Armory, you know, the developer tax, even, you know, the developer that forked off Bitcoin Cash. No, even you know, someone who was held up that high. No, we fought that off. And the same with BSV. And so it's a story of really fighting for permissionless. And it's really, I think it's an interesting point, because everyone here understands that. But does everyone else? Like, that story has not been written quite like that. And I think that is a really compelling narrative. And so, you know, everything we've been talking about and all the work to actually continue on that journey, make sure that Bitcoin Cash, like, this permissionless journey is really clear, really at the forefront, and why that's so important. I think that could become an incredibly compelling story that will end up leading to exactly, you know, that outcome of that one person joining Bitcoin Cash, very, you know, who's important and quite loud because they care about permissionless. I think, yeah.
And an additional big point here is that, you know, it's a super common catching point that people are like, oh, I can't help. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a programmer. I'm not a whatever. And it's like, okay, here is a top level, absolutely critical problem that has nothing to do with programming, building, or being technical. right?
Right. Exactly.
Please solve.
Exactly.
Please work on it.
All right. I know Fiendish is going to have to go in a minute. So, Fiendish, I don't know if you want to give any final thoughts, but then we will also be wrapping up shortly regardless. And, I'm pleased that it seems like, there's definitely something here in terms of taking this concept on this whiteboard, turning it into maybe a slicker website with AI, this idea of this tracker for the Nakamoto coefficient. I'm vaguely aware of that, but I'll need to look into that a little bit more. And then somehow the BCH community thinking about how we can improve our messaging on this front for 2026. And then you also have, of course, these yellow squares here, the wallet, a little bit of work to do, but it's kind of on the right track. Mining, a lot of work to do, not really at all on the right track. And this one probably needs to be like a darker orange. Like we got a bigger problem over here. But these other ones were sort of on the right track. Anyway, that is to say, Fiendish, if you have any sort of final thoughts before you got to jump.
Yeah, so I like this. I like the visualization, seeing what is already permissionless and where there's work to be done. And I think it'd be good to have. I think really important if permissionless is so important to be aware of this as a community and actually be aware where there's still work to do is incredibly important. It'd be also quite good to put some numbers to all of that. So in the end, you could have a value from 0 to 10, 10 being absolutely permissionless, 0 being not at all, and to see how that grows, how that changes over time, because permissionless is super important. And it seems so obvious to all of us, but I'm absolutely convinced that, as we discussed last time, at a certain price point, at a certain momentum point, the Bitcoin Cash community is going to exponentially grow. And all of the voices here will become much more diluted in the grand scheme of things, other than if everyone here collectively, and myself included, up our leadership game and make sure that we stay at the forefront of thought leadership when it comes to what this is all about. There's a long journey ahead of us until it's just the status quo, and decentralization is not even something we need to consider, because it's just how it is and everyone gets that intuitively. I don't know how far away that is. Maybe it's 10 years, maybe it's 50. Maybe we're planting the trees that we're never going to experience the shade of that. I'm also okay with that. But everything we do now is super important. So the more seeds we plant and the more we sort of track this in a meaningful way, the better it is. And the more that it keeps that at the absolute forefront of Bitcoin Cash as it goes through what I think it's going to happen, a very rapid period of growth. This year already, but increasing with every year. And that comes back. So to everyone here, please keep doing these sort of podcasts, keep your blogs coming up for XO, be more present, talk about these things, not just the technicals, but also why. With permissionless, there's a lot of ways of making something permissionless, but why is it important? I think it's really important to just keep hammering that drum, even when you think everyone gets it. Yeah, sure, but we've got new people arriving into Bitcoin Cash every day, and they won't get it, not like we do. So keep banging that drum, keep leading the way forward. And I'm looking forward. 2026. Good luck with XO. It's a really, really important project. And everyone be awesome people. And Jeremy, you told us to hold you accountable for dunking. I think this is a fantastic thing to hold you accountable for. And it's funny, I'm not going to be dunking people. Well, not so much anyway. What is it, an hour later?
Yeah.
With Lops. Keep that up. One of the last posts you made with the thread about Bitcoin Cash, it was really positive. It was really optimistic. It had all the reasons in there why people should be super excited by Bitcoin Cash. And I really could get behind that. And I'd love to see a lot more of that. And what I'm sure of, if you drive in a lot more in that direction, you're going to see your 10K is going to be cracked before you know it, and you'll have a lot more people tuning in onto it, because I think the time for dunking, yeah, it's picking on the little weak guy in this school. It's not fun. I really feel it. We are so much more powerful than that now, and so now is the time to show why should you be coming to Bitcoin Cash. Why is it so freaking awesome? Because there's a lot of reasons, and I love that thread. I want to see more of that. Yeah, happy New Year to everyone here. I wish you all a great 2026, and let's make it the most successful yet.
Happy New Year. See you finish.
Happy New Year.
So yeah, I definitely for sure I deserved that. I did need that accountability, and yeah, I mean, to be fair to myself a little bit, is there's also the unseen, which is that I considered making a thread, like going into detail about all of that, but I restricted myself to one post. So even unseen, I did actually back it off from what I thought I was going to do. And I have been, arguing a little bit with some of these BTC guys, but yeah, I am definitely trying to back it off. And I don't know if I'll hit absolute zero. I even gave myself an out in that initial post not to hit absolute zero because I knew I wouldn't. But in any case, you're right. We're moving in the right direction there, and hopefully, I can just stick to doing more of that stuff. I've got one more topic that I want to kind of briefly do if the GP guys have time for it still, which I think might be quite interesting. I don't know. Imagine we got.
I'm not sure about all of us. I can hang out.
Okay, maybe just another 10-15 minutes, and then we'll wrap, which is about Ethereum, actually, because what Fiendish was saying about putting a website with maybe these different categories, some numbers, progress bars, 0 to 100, the community evaluates itself to try and find weaknesses. Where are we doing well? Where are we not doing well? There's been a lot of that in Ethereum, right? They have those sites with the layer 2 projects and different stages, green bars and yellow bars. They have one that I've seen for their clients, whether Geth or Reth or whatever is the percentage of the network, and like they do take it all that stuff seriously, and they do present it like that quite well. And it circles back to at the start of the show as well. I just wrote down to myself that you guys were talking about surpassing the EVM and the Ethereum community. We're not going to copy them. We're going to do better than them. But clearly they are the ones that we're drawing inspiration from in that sense, right? They are the existing industry and intellectual leaders on that DeFi angle, right? They've already, and maybe not just in our minds, but in the broader minds, they've already far surpassed the BTC community. Market cap is irrelevant. They already have the intellectual leadership in that sense. So I'm just wondering if, briefly, that's one more topic I wanted to poke and prod you guys a little bit about. What is it about the Ethereum community that is maybe admirable that we need to, raise the bar on, that we are not matching up to them on? So what can we do there? And then, what areas can we sort of surpass them at, or what should we look to avoid replicating because we have the benefit of hindsight?
I have a simple answer, which might not be satisfying. I don't know, but it's the same as the thing that I say. We just need more entrepreneurs, because anybody who remembers the origin of Ethereum remembers that Ethereum in its origin had nothing to do with the Ethereum that you see today, right? And so the same thing. And what changed was a concerted interest in the success of Ethereum, the marketing of Ethereum, the infrastructure, and that drew in a huge amount of entrepreneurialism, protocols, companies, infrastructure, libraries, APIs, etc. All of that stuff exploded not in a vacuum, but from people trying to do some kind of business or some kind of enterprise, either individually or as organizations, in my opinion. And so I come back to the same point, which is I just want to see the amount of entrepreneurs and successful projects grow. And I think a lot of these things will be downstream of that. Of course, there's other things that can be done better, but I really think that's fundamentally the answer.
Imaginary and Jonathan, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, nothing in particular. I mean, a lot of the things that Ethereum is doing well, is not necessarily something that came from Ethereum, right? It's demonstrated in Ethereum, but I think most of the business lessons, so to speak, exist in traditional business going back tens, if not hundreds of years. And I think we have a lot to learn still, and we have a lot of growth still to do.
And the thing about Ethereum is that ultimately what they did well is that there was no other coin at the time who broke into their niche. And their niche, I would argue, was the permissionless trading of virtual properties. Well, I mean, one could argue that it's not really that permissionless, but it's more permissionless relative to other things that's available at the time. They broke into that niche and they did well. We also also have similar setups on BCH, but beyond this, I think the lesson we can take the most is just to, as John has said in multiple occasions, to find that niche. And it usually can't be a niche that someone else already found, because they found it and they occupied it, and it's kind of and if you see it many years in hindsight, it's already pretty crowded. So yeah, I think that's the take home that I got from Ethereum, that it has everything to do with finding that niche, and I would say in terms of permissionlessness, less so.
Okay, all right. Well, otherwise, I think we can probably just move to wrap up the show then. I have a community comment of the week here from Callisti, which I think is basically on this same topic of everything we've been saying, where he said, quote, "Need to delete Twitter from my phone again. Overall, I see fewer reasons to be chronically monitoring X nowadays. BCH price action can do the debating and marketing now. Need to put 100% focus on building. I am the news, so must go do newsworthy things instead of wasting time," end quote. And I think that's basically summarizes up the attitude in 2026. Fiendish calling me out correctly, same thing. No need to be fighting people on social media. We're past that. It was important at the time, but it's now just not as much. We just got to put up results, and the recognition will follow. Okay, our FundMe contributors. We have Majamalu. I don't know. Do you guys want to do messages to the community? Have you got time for that, or? I think everybody kind of already said it a little bit.
Yeah, I'll pass.
Okay, all right, never mind. All right, FundMe contributors. Majamali, This Is a Marathon. Molecular, the show we love. Cash Dragon, Bastion.com, fair and decentralized Twitter. At Cash Dance, BCH for the win. DGN and FOQ, Sick Rap Anthem, #1 token coming at you. P2P Cash, Smash the Stake. Greater than 40% APY, https://nwb.cash. Journal, best podcast ever. Brian Kanachi and Anonymous. Our supporter appreciation, donators, patrons, Ricky8, Kyle, and HP. Our sponsors, check out General Protocols and BCHbull.com. Thank you all for watching. You can check out BitcoinCashPodcast.com for more information and listen to episode 85 if you're new to the show. Final shout outs and where people can find more of you, Emergent.
Yes, so stack.xo.cash is probably a good place to start if you want to see, I think it's stack.xo.cash/blog. It has a blog button there too, of course. That would be a good place to go if you want to read what in the world we were talking about with all this XO stuff. Like, what does that actually mean? What is it actually? That would be a great place to go to go see what we're doing. So yeah, please take a look at that. And then of course, if you're looking to hold BCH, be in a permissionless money, be in charge of your own money, and not have somebody else who can tell you what to do with it, or whether you can even use it or not, and so forth, then yeah, get into BCH. And then if you are worried about the price going up and down and so forth, go to bchbull.com or go to Moria, or soon you can go to Parity USD. And there's many options available to you. Just ask around and you will find options that will let you find some kind of stability while still having control of your money, even as you achieve that stability. yes, so please go to bchbull.com. Or if you want to have some more fun, go to bchbear.com, and you can share that with whoever might enjoy it.
Jonathan, any final shout outs?
No.
Okay, nothing from you, Imaginary?
What John said. Yeah.
And Jet?
My shout out goes to Luke Pryor for finally starting some kind of BCH health or fitness like community channel.
Nice.
Yeah, been a long time coming, I think. So
yeah, people are always talking about it, and yeah, well, I'll jump on that one too. Then he's been great, and that should be another thing in 2026. Everyone in BCH try and get as fit and healthy as possible, because it's kind of the baseline for everything else you can do. If you're sick, it's kind of like you can't help anyone else if you can't help yourself, and that's the number one thing you can do to help yourself. Yeah, stay fit and energetic, and the rest will flow from there. Okay, thank you all for listening. Till next time.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Cryptonana, exit liquidity, hodl-nana, dump it all. Cryptonana, exit liquidity, hodl-nana, dump it all. Cryptonana, exit liquidity, dump it all. Hodl-nana, dump it all. Chain and blinking, step into the trade. There's more to lose than can never be won, more to dump than can never be saved. Influencers, tweets, and the noobs all follow, buying high, selling low at a game. But the boomers know, and Sailor, he knows that the dump is coming. It's all the same. It's the circle of exit liquidity, and it moves us all through despair and hope, through faith and FOMO, till we find our place on the path unwinding in the circle of exit liquidity. And some of us soar to the stars, but the influencers always win with the Lambos and their cars. So beware of the pump and the inevitable dump, for the cycle continues and the news get wrecked. Cryptonana, exit liquidity, hodl-nana, dump it all. Cryptonana, exit liquidity, hodl-nana, dump it all. Cryptonana, exit liquidity, dump it all. Hodl-nana, dump it all. All through this liquidity.